Hey everyone, I'm Adam Ariema, the editor-in-chief of NextAdvisor, and welcome to the first installment of Money Talks with NextAdvisor. Today, in honor of Pride Month, we have a very special guest. The one and only Suze Orman will be joining us for the next hour to talk about her experiences as a gay woman in finance, an industry that hasn't traditionally been welcoming for the queer community. Susie told me recently that she never wanted to be known as the lesbian money lady. Instead, she wanted to be known as the money lady who is also a lesbian. But she also said that being a lesbian was the reason she was able to succeed in a field dominated by straight men. Susie says that the strength and the fortitude she developed growing up as someone different, being teased as a kid, not being accepted by her parents, struggling to find work, making $400 a month as a waitress until she was 29, those tough experiences hardened her, she said, and made it so that she could face the challenges of breaking into the investing world. Today, she's going to open up about those experiences, from growing up on the south side of Chicago to embracing her identity in the 1970s in Berkeley, California, and later, in 1980, making an unlikely career jump as one of the first female stockbrokers at the Oakland office of Merrill Lynch, the wealth management firm. You can imagine what it must have been like to be the only lesbian stockbroker in 1980 in that culture. Susie has said that she had to deal with a testosterone-driven work environment where her male colleagues expected sexual favors from the women they worked with in exchange for leads. But against all odds, Susie thrived in that environment, and she says her sexuality was the reason for that. Being gay was the foundation of my success, Susie recently told me. Susie's joining us in a couple minutes. We'll dive into all of that. We'll talk more about how she managed to be open and honest about her sexuality, even when she became famous, and her advice for anyone who wants to build wealth and live a rich life, no matter their identity. After that, Susie will answer our NextAdvisor reader questions on all your money issues, from buying a house, to saving and investing money, to cryptocurrency and more, so stay tuned for that later. But for now, let's welcome Suze Orman.
It's good to be here with you.
It's great to be with you. All right, so I want to start going back in time a little bit. Talked a little bit about your experiences in Berkeley, California. You grew up in Chicago, but you spent most of your 20s in Berkeley. You were working as a waitress, making $400 a month, but it sounds like that's also when you really came into your identity as a lesbian. You lived with other women, you were dating, you were getting involved with Olivia Records, the women's music label, and you told me that that was the greatest time in your life. Can you tell me more about what that was like?
Actually, I really came out when I was like 13 years of age, and it was in high school. And I had such a crush on this woman by the name of Susie as well. And that's when I really knew that I was a lesbian. In fact, my friends once said to me, even earlier than that, when I was in grammar school, somebody looked at me and said, you know, you're such a lesbian, Susie. And I remember going home and saying to my mom and dad, what's a lesbian? And they just looked at me like, you don't want to know the answer to that question. But it was very young that I knew and started to identify with the fact that I was a lesbian. Then when I went to college at the University of Illinois, that's when everything started to really click for me. And my identity then really was a lesbian because I opened up what was called the Gay Women's House. So that's when I started to go and we, went to a gay bar, or we did this or we did that. And I had the best time of my life because I was a lesbian. It was fabulous. And so from there, when I did go to Berkeley, California, it was very easy to fit into the lesbian community there because it was very large in California. And my life just continued to blossom because of that. My first job in California was at a place called Loaves and Dishes that was a little restaurant run by all lesbians. And it was there that all the people that went on to be the stars of Olivia Records would perform. And so this entire time, Adam, all the way up through my 30s, my total identity was a lesbian. So I was firm in that identity. I loved that identity. I knew who I was. And what's interesting is most people don't even know who they are as they're growing up. But I knew one thing, and one thing for sure about myself. I didn't know what I wanted to be. I was a waitress for 7 years, but I knew that I was a lesbian, and I was proud of it. And I was proud of it because I was so, so happy.
I love that story, but how did you develop that pride? Or this is Pride Month, is the reason we're talking to you. And you say that kids, they teased you about being a lesbian, and your parents didn't necessarily accept you, and yet it didn't seem to bother you. How did that happen?
Well, what happened was the very first thing was, you know how when you're kids and you're in high school, you have parties and they go on till 1, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. And Susie and I had gone to this party, and Susie fell asleep on my lap. And I kind of fell asleep as well. It was, you know, I was leaning against the wall. And the next day, I had one of my best friends that's when they started to call me a lesbian. And at that point, it was like, oh, and that bothered me for a while until I started to realize how happy I was being a lesbian and how much I really liked Susie. So it really wasn't that hard for me, truthfully, Adam, ever. And what was so great is that, you know, my friends started to realize that it was fine. So almost in my innocence, I was educating my friends around me that it was okay to be a lesbian. So I never really struggled with that. And what was interesting is that my parents didn't even really get it at first. They didn't get it until I started to bring home women. And they, you know, when I was in college, just for a little vacation or whatever it was. And my father would say things like, we would all be in the car. I'll never forget this, a group of us. And I had gone shopping for him to get him some fruit. And he was coming in as we were going out. And I said, Dad, the fruit's in the kitchen. And he said to us, looks to me like the fruit's still in the car. And we all looked at each other like, what does that mean? We didn't even know what that really meant. But he died so early on, really. He died when he was 71. And it was my mom that kept feeling like she had failed because I was a lesbian. Even though she went along with it and she loved KT and everything, when my mom died, my aunt told me that the hardest thing in my mom's life was the fact that I was a lesbian and she could never accept it. But I had already been so rooted in the strength of it because I loved being a lesbian. I loved that I got to go and be with my friends all the time that were all lesbians as well. I don't know, it was a culture back then that even though it was in the late 60s and early 70s, it was almost as if the Vietnam War was more of something at that time and people were talking about, even though what was happening in New York and everything, it was just something I was so proud of always, Adam. I can't really explain it, but it was just my identity. It was one thing that I knew about myself that I loved.
What actually brought you out to Berkeley? Was there a feeling that you wanted to get away from Chicago, to get away from your family? Did you know that you would find your people there in a way that you hadn't before?
No, it was just that we had never seen a hill. And it was my girlfriend, Lori Seligman, and myself and 2 other women. And we decided, let's go find life. And I had borrowed $1,500 from my brother to buy a 1970, this was 1973, but a 1970 Ford Econoline van. We fixed it up and we headed out to Berkeley, California, because it just seemed like, oh, California, that's probably where everything's happening at. And we got here and 2 of our friends we left in LA. Then Lori and I continued on to Berkeley and we lived in that van on the streets, Adam, because we didn't have any money for almost 3 or 4 months till I landed my dream job as a waitress at the Buttercup Bakery, and Lori washed dishes there. And little by little, it almost turned into a whole lesbian restaurant because almost everybody that got hired was a lesbian. So it was, again, really, I lived in a lesbian world and I loved that world. It was a fun world and everybody belonged, and it felt like we were all supporting one another and proud to be who we were and who we still are to this day.
And even though you had no money, you were happy.
I made $400 a month for 7 years, but
Yeah.
those aren't my memories of making the money. My memories are of us even having a Passover and, 40 lesbians all gathering at our house in this tiny little apartment and having a Seder. And those are the memories, are all going to the festivals where Meg Christian and Chris Williamson and all these women were performing. And it was just a really fabulous time of my life, I have to tell you.
It sounds amazing, and it also sounds surprising for people who know you as the money lady, as the financial advisor, as the CFP. So you're having this beautiful existence in Berkeley, and then all of a sudden, you're a stockbroker at Merrill Lynch. How did that happen?
Well, the way that happened was I so wanted to own my own restaurant. And I watched the Buttercup Bakery go from when I started working there to this tiny little place on the corner of College and Alcatraz. There was no place to sit. It was like maybe 4 or 5 people could eat there, to almost the Richard and Michaels who owned it, owning half the block. And on some level, a lot of my ideas were why they were able to expand. And I went, you know what? I can do this on my own. And so I had this dream of owning my own restaurant. And the trouble was, though, I didn't have any money. And my parents didn't have any money. They were totally broke. My mother was a secretary that sold Avon on the side. Like I told you, my dad was always sick his entire life. And so there was nobody I could go to. And one day I didn't look so happy. And one of the customers that I've been waiting on for 7 years asked me why I didn't look so happy like I always do. I said, Fred, his name was Fred Hasbrook. Fred, I want to own my own restaurant, but I don't have enough money to do so. And he went down and he sat with all the people I've been waiting on for all those years. And he came back with checks totaling $50,000 and commitments for that. And I said, what is this? And he said, Susie, this is for you to have your dreams come true, to be paid back in 10 years at no interest if you can. I didn't know what to do with that money. And so he said, take it down to the local Merrill Lynch and put it in a money market account. Adam, I didn't know what a Merrill Lynch was, and I didn't know what a money market account was. So I said, okay. He told me, I went, I deposited it, but I was met that day when I walked into Merrill Lynch by the broker of the day, which is the person who gets all the people that walk in. His name was Randy. And he sat down, I had $50,000. I told him what the money was for. And he said, okay, how would you like to make though a quick $100 a week? And I said, yeah, Randy, that's essentially what I make as a waitress. And he said, sign here on the bottom line. And it was all these blank papers and I just signed everywhere. And then I left. And he filled out the paperwork after I left to make it look like I was a very sophisticated investor. And he qualified me to play the options market, which, as you know, is one of the most speculative ways to invest money possible. And to make a very long story short, within 3 months, all $50,000 was lost. But in those 3 months, I was paying attention to what he was doing. I started to listen to Louis Rukeyser on Wall Street Week. I started to read Barron's and learn about the options market and everything. And in essence, I almost knew more in 3 months that Randy knew at all about options. So after all the money was lost, I thought, I know I can be a broker. They just make you broker. So I got dressed in my red and white striped Sassoon pants, tucked into my white cowboy boots. I still wear cowboy boots to this day, and a blue silk shirt. And I go into Merrill Lynch for a job. I figure, why not? I enjoyed that. And I wanted to pay those people back. And so I end up in the manager's office, Peter Sansevero, who says to me, you know, Susie, women belong barefoot and pregnant. but I'm going to hire you, but I am going to fire you in 6 months. Why did he hire me? It was 1980 and it was affirmative action. So of course he had to hire women, but he was going to fire me. So I was still Suze Orman back then. And I said to him, well, how much are you going to pay me to make me pregnant? And he said $1,500 a month. And I knew in 6 months that was equivalent to 2 years of working at the Buttercup. Because I loved working at the Buttercup. I loved being a waitress. I loved being there. So I thought, okay. And that's how I got hired. And that was the start of Suze Orman in the financial world.
Amazing. So you're a woman at Merrill Lynch in your cowboy boots. I mean, so there's two levels here. Like, there's no women there, but I imagine there's definitely no gay women. How did your male colleagues react to you?
So they reacted great because I was so proud of who I was. I didn't hide it. I would like Flip, who would sit next to me or behind me one year. His desk was right behind me before I moved into my own office. And everybody knew that I was a lesbian because I told everybody I was a lesbian. Why did I tell everybody a lesbian? Because I was proud of who I was. And I didn't care about what they thought. I didn't care. And so therefore, they embraced me as one of their own, believe it or not, because when the brokers would have birthday parties, they would hire women strippers to come in and perform for them. And they thought because I was a lesbian,
The Office?
love that, yes, that I would love that. And because I was also smart enough not to really want to really upset the whole apple cart there until later on anyway, was that I went, that's great. You know, I didn't make it that this was a women's liberation thing and you have to change. I was just happy that they were accepting me as a lesbian. And the way it also worked for me is that as other women started to be hired, and even the secretaries that worked there back then, on some level, it was expected that they would have to sleep with either the manager or the sales manager to get leads. It was just a known fact. But nobody expected that of me. I never had to deal with that, while all the other women did. My lesbianism freed me to be a powerful woman and almost be treated like the other men in the office, while the other women really were so oppressed and freaked out. And one day I remember maybe a year or two into this, or even maybe a little bit longer, 3 years possibly, the women all got together and decided we have to do something about this because we can't take this oppression anymore. And that's when all the women gathered together and really kind of came after Merrill Lynch in the Oakland office there legally. So it was an interesting ride for me, but it was also very interesting. One other quick story. My name is Suze Orman. Initials are S.O. And so early on, I started to be very successful as a stockbroker. You know, I was really great at it. And so I would win one contest after another contest after another contest. And the invitations would always say, bring, come to this, celebration and bring your spouse. And so I would walk into the manager's office and I would say, I'm tired of having you telling me that I need to bring a spouse when it's impossible for me to have a spouse. I have a significant other. And he said, okay, let's just change it. Now Peter had left and a new manager had come in. He said, okay, let's just say, bring your SO, and that would stand for significant other. So they were, they were with me there, but they were with me there, Adam, because of how strong I was. And I wish I could tell all of you, where does strength come from? Where did I have the ability to stand up for it and not care? I don't have the answer for you for that. But I can tell you, when you do that, then others change, because then others don't have what it takes to put you down. They didn't, feel my fear because I didn't have any. Again, so if somehow Those that are afraid can stand in your truth. If those who are afraid to just say it, just do it once, and your life can change.
That makes sense. So now I understand what you said when you said that being gay was the foundation of your success. But it's more than that. It's about being gay, but really owning and knowing who you are and telling people who you are.
Because you cannot be successful if you can't stand in your truth. You cannot be successful if you can't tell people who you are, because otherwise you're always hiding. You're living a life of fear. And what is the main internal obstacle to wealth? It is fear. Now, I'm not saying that there isn't sometimes good reasons for you to be afraid. Of course, you don't want to walk into a group of white supremacists and all of a sudden announce it. But when you're working with people, when you're, with your family, when you're with your friends, you cannot hide it from them. Because if you don't have a voice, your words are meaningless. There's no power in them. And there's the number one law of money. And that law is power attracts money and powerlessness repels it. And when you dwell in fear, when you don't have a voice, how are you ever going to be successful?
I love that. That's so important. I mean, it's up to us to know who we are and say it. And it's also up to us to, when other people say who they are, that we accept that and we respect that. And that's really what this is all about. So you almost had nothing to lose walking into Merrill Lynch. You thought you'd be fired in 6 months, and turns out you're incredibly successful. You start your own advisory firm. Let's fast forward a little bit into the 90s. So now you are becoming the money lady. You've got a book deal, right? You've got a bestseller. Now it's almost like you have something to lose here. And yet you say you continue to be unapologetic about being gay. You tell people when you're making business deals, like, hey, I'm gay, you should know that. Is that right? Did you ever have a second thought that says, ooh, I'm becoming famous now, maybe I should rethink this?
No, but what was so interesting, because I told everybody, I told Larry King, I told Meredith Vieira and everybody at the Today Show. I told everybody. KT, 20 years ago when I, started to be with KT, she came everywhere with me. I told Oprah. So I never hid it from anybody. So I always thought everybody knew. So there was nothing, that I had to be afraid of. And remember, the first big book deal I did, because You've Earned It, Don't Lose It, was my very first book that came out in 1995. Went on to sell 800,000 copies in hardback. Great, no problem. That's a big deal. But then I did the 9 Steps to Financial Freedom, and my book advance on You've Earned It, Don't Lose It was $10,000. Okay, and I thought the way that you made money on a book was selling books. That's what I thought. However, when 9 Steps to Financial Freedom came out, I was offered $800,000 advance. And I thought that was like, are you kidding me? $800,000 to write a book. So I went, no, I can't do this. And I went into Crown, who got the contract, and Chip Gibson was the president at the time. And I said, Chip, I have to tell you something. And he says, okay. I said, I'm a lesbian. And if anybody asks me if I'm a lesbian, I'm going to tell them that I'm a lesbian. And he said, well, tell us something we don't know about you, Susie. And I was, okay, I just wanted to make sure. And what was so strange is nobody ever asked me, ever.
Yeah.
Except when it was, I think her name was Deborah Solomon of the New York Times Magazine, interviewed me. And it was supposed to be about the book, Women and Money. This was in 2007. And it was supposed to be about that book. And she asked me the question, are you heterosexual? And I go, no. I'm a 50-year-old, I'm a 50-year-old virgin. No, I'm not heterosexual. That's how I answered it because it was true at the time, something like that. And then
Yep.
she writes about that, writes about it. And the exact same time when Women in Money was coming out. And I didn't want, and we had a tremendous book tour planned for it. That book sold 1 million copies in hardback right off the bat. So all these places I was going, I didn't want them to ask me about being a lesbian when I'm supposed to be there talking about my Women in Money book. So I would sit down with them and I would say to them, please don't ask me about that. This interview needs to be about the book. And they would say to me, well, everybody knows you're a lesbian, so why would we talk about it? Right. And Solomon, I think that was her name. I think she was like, oh, I'm going to get her. I'm going to be the first person to tell everybody that she's a lesbian. It didn't quite work that way.
Yeah, I mean, technically speaking, if you look this up, it'll say you came out in 2007 in a New York Times interview, but you were out your whole life. And by that point, you had you had been with KT for 7 years.
Yeah, I mean, look at this. I win 2 Emmy Awards on national television. I think it was 2004 and 2006. And especially, I think it was in 2004 when I looked straight in the camera and they announced my name. I stand up and I kiss KT and I look at her and I go, KT, sweetheart, this one's for you. Like, really? I didn't come out till 2007. Are you kidding me? But Deborah wanted to get, she wanted to get credit for that. All right, fine. Take credit for it, girlfriend. But I've always been a lesbian and I'm so proud of it.
Tell us more about KT. So KT is your wife. You met her when you were 50 years old, and she's made you incredibly happy. You two are incredibly happy together. How did you meet KT?
We met at her house for dinner. It was April 16th, and I had just come back from New York to California, and I was in a relationship at the time with another woman that I had been involved with for 8 years, and I was living with her. And however, our relationship was not good on any level. But I was so happy being Suze Orman, traveling by myself, going here. I never was in California to even be with her, so I didn't really even care, to tell you the truth. But I just knew, leave it alone. One day she'll leave me and everything will be fine. So I arrived back in California, not having been there for years, not for months rather, not having been in my own home. And I had to give a talk that next morning for 5,000 women for the mayor at the time. And what was interesting is I had to leave and be on the news and everything starting at 5 a.m. And I'm already on New York time. And so it's like a little bit hard, but that's besides the point. So I'm there at 5 a.m. and I finally return at 5 p.m. that afternoon. And I have to be on a plane at 7 a.m. the next morning to go back to New York. So I go in the house and she says to me, we're going out to dinner. And I said, I am not going out to dinner. I haven't been here in 4 months. I'm exhausted. I don't want to go out to dinner. She goes, no, we're going out to dinner. She throws a fit. So I said, fine, I'll go. And the dinner was at KT. I call her KT. Her real name's Kathy Travis. At KT's house, because KT's good friends were friends with me and they invited, us over there. Anyway, right before we go in, the woman I'm with says to me, can you just not say anything? Because when you go anywhere, all people care about is what you have to say, and nobody ever talks to me. I go, fine, I won't say a word. We go in, and that's where I meet KT. And I really don't say much to KT. I don't say much to anybody, to tell you the truth, but I had a pretty good time. And then we leave and we go back. And I leave and I go to New York. And the woman that I was with, for all those years, got a crush on KT. So she sends KT these beautiful flowers, invites KT out, all this stuff, all right? But anyway, KT wants to call me now to thank me as well for the flowers. So KT called me in New York because she now has my number, and we end up talking till 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. And from that day on, we talked till 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. And what was so great, and I just have to tell this story because I just want you to know the integrity of KT, is that KT went out with this woman like in the next few days, not on a date, just to go see a movie because she was invited, not even knowing that she had a crush on her. And all the woman told her was how much she hated me because all I did was work. I didn't like to go out. I worked 24 hours a day, and all the reasons why she didn't want to be in a relationship with me, which gave KT the freedom to pursue a relationship with me. Very interesting. But that's how it started, Adam. That's kind of the story. And we never really left each other since then.
No, anyone who knows you knows KT and knows how much you love her. KT, obviously, as you said, Kathleen Travis. When you met KT, you were wealthy, but she was wealthy too already. She had a career as I believe, an advertising executive.
A serious
What did
advertising
KT
executive. She lived in
Yeah.
Hong Kong for 20 some odd years and was one of the presidents of Ogilvy Mather, one of the largest advertising companies in the world. And so KT had some serious pocket change when I first met her. And so she didn't even
Good.
know who I was because she lived in Hong Kong all that time and she had just moved back to San Francisco, and she came back because at the time she was with another woman who got cancer and who died, but she had come back to take care of her. And so KT then ended up kind of staying there in San Francisco. And so no, KT was serious in and totally independent and so happy when I met her.
You're the money lady. Did KT teach you anything about money?
Yeah, she taught me how if people who make a whole lot of money don't know what the heck to do with it. Right? So she made every possible mistake because she listened to the advisors that were in, Asia and had so much money in insurance policies, every possible mistake, even though she had a lot of money and everything, she could have had so much more. So I totally revamped everything and got her on the right track. And even to this day, Adam, KT and I have separate accounts. We do not have one joint account. And
Not one.
Not one.
Wow.
And now we own our houses and everything together and things like that. But KT is the one who manages her own money. She makes her own stock moves. She does everything on her own. And I do not advise her. I do not tell her what to do because KT is a strong woman. And if God forbid anything happened to me, I want her to know how to do everything on her own. And she does.
All right, we're going to get into some reader questions here, but one of them is related to this. I want to ask it to you now. We talked about couples and financially planning as a couple. You and KT have separate accounts. Is that what you would recommend for most couples?
It depends, what you have when you have coming into the relationship. But I would absolutely recommend that you have at least 3 accounts. One for you, one for your, partner or spouse, and one joint account where you pay the joint expenses out of. So I would have at least 3 accounts or 2 accounts, one of your own, one of the others, and then you decide how you're going to split bills. But I would never, ever have just one joint account and that's it. Never, ever, ever.
Got it. Let's talk about estate planning for a minute. You're a wealthy woman. You have a lot of money that you'll leave behind. Is estate planning different for queer couples, for gay couples? Is there other things we should be considering?
On some level, it's almost easier for us, I have to tell you, at least for myself and KT, because we don't have children. So it's not like, who's going to get what? How are we going to do this? And everything like that. We have nieces and nephews and we've left a considerable sum for them. But really, 99% of the estate is going to charity. And I just have a belief that people can do it on their own, and they should do it on their own. And sometimes when you leave large sums of money to kids, it overwhelms them, and in my opinion, sometimes ruins their life. So everybody will be comfortable, but nobody's going to be able to just live forever on what we're leaving them. So,
Right.
so is it different? Here's the thing you have to understand, Adam. Money doesn't have a sexuality, doesn't have a religion, doesn't have a race, doesn't have anything. Money is for every single person, regardless of who you are, what you believe in, where you live. It's for everybody. And I really found that out when I've traveled the world to speak in India, China, Australia, Malaysia, all over the world I've spoken. And the language of money is a universal language. So whether you are gay, lesbian, it doesn't matter your sexuality. How you deal with money is exactly the same as if you were heterosexual.
And whether you're heterosexual or not, how you deal with money is really affected it's really affected by how you deal with yourself, right? Who you are and your identity and how you feel about yourself, whether you feel powerful, right?
Yeah, because when you feel less than, you tend to spend more than. When you feel less than, you define yourself by the things that you buy, the homes that you live in, the cars that you drive, the clothes that you wear. But when you know who you are, when you feel like you get it, you know who you are, you define your money doesn't define you. And now we have an entire switch with everything. Because it's one thing to be powerful and to have a lot of pride in who you are. Then you have to expand out from there. Because then you have to be more than just a person, so to speak. You have to be a person who works, a person that relates to people, a person that invests, that saves, that spends. Because you and your money are one, and it's just how it is. Your money can't do anything without you, and you can't have money without you. You're the one who goes out and gets a job. You're the one who works for it. You're the one who saves it, spends it, and does whatever. So you and your money are one. And if your money isn't doing well, that's because you aren't doing well. So I always say you have to go within to see why you are doing without.
That's a great message. I want to thank you for sharing your story this way. It's really special to talk to you during Pride Month about this. So thank you. And if you're down, I want to ask you some more money questions now that we've got you on the line. We've got lots of questions from our readers. We also asked for some questions from the Pride group here at NextAdvisor's company and want to put some questions to you. Is that good?
You got it. Go for it, boyfriend.
All right. Let's see. Suze Orman, you've come a long way. How has your views and opinions on money changed from when you were, let's say, at the Buttercup Bakery to now? Do you have different opinions about money than you did then?
Yeah, I thought money was the key to happiness. I thought if I had a lot of money, I would be happy. And as time went on and I started to make money and I had money in the bank, I was making 120,000 a year, 200,000 a year, whatever it was. It started to grow and grow, making more money than I ever thought. And I still wasn't quite happy. Even though I was proud that I was a lesbian, there was something inside of me besides that, Adam, that was somehow, I just wasn't happy. And maybe because I was choosing the wrong women or whatever it may have been, but I still wasn't happy. And so that's when I realized that I had to really learn more about who I was on every single level. And so I started a spiritual journey that way. I remember going to India and doing this and doing that, and where are the questions, where are the answers? And eventually they all came until I really knew who I was in totality. Because there's more to you than just a really rich person, a lesbian. There's another spiritual element to you, another human element to you. And all of those things have to combine as one. So as I got older and I realized that money can never make you happy. Lack of money sure will make you miserable. That's true. But money alone will never make you happy. So my views of money now are very interesting. I'm not interested in having a really fancy car or a fancy this or a fancy that or I'm not interested in those things anymore. They hold nothing for me. No, I'm really just happy just living our life. KT and I hardly ever go out to eat. Good luck getting KT to spend any money on clothes. It ain't going to happen. I mean, it's just not going to happen because she doesn't care about it, right? And so, we're not as obsessed about making money on any level or money. That's not our goals anymore. Our goals are to be happy and to help the world and to be kind and generous and things like that. So, my views of money and how I use money now are different than how I ever thought I would end up using it. Right. But my real goal is that I really hope I want everybody to experience financial freedom. I want everybody to experience the goal of money. And the goal of money is for you to be secure. And I want everybody to be able to experience that. And I know in many cases it's possible. Not all, but in many it is.
Let's talk about the housing market for a minute. I'm sure you've seen the market is insane this year. The housing supply is low. Mortgage rates are also low, which is leading a lot of people to try to get into the market. We have a question from a reader who says, I can't afford to put 20% down. The market looks really tough. Should I put off buying a house if I don't have 20%?
I've always had a rule of thumb that you should put at least 20% down so you don't have to pay PMI, which is private mortgage insurance. However, with the prices of homes today, if this is something that you really want to do, and you can do it with 10% down, but besides the 10% down, you have an additional 12 months of an emergency fund, you are totally out of credit card debt, you are fully funding your retirement accounts, and that you have a secure job, and that you can afford not only the mortgage payment, but the property taxes, the maintenance on it, everything that goes along with buying a home. Okay, go ahead and do it. But if you think that it's going to make it so that you can't do anything, you're going to be house rich but cash poor, I would wait at this point in time.
Got it. It speaks to the importance of looking at your entire housing budget. Say you put 10% down, what is that going to mean for your payments, for your insurance, et cetera, and really crunch those numbers. All right, got to ask you about cryptocurrency. It's all the rage. We get tons of questions about crypto. Here's one easy one. Do you own any crypto?
I do own crypto, but yes. However, I only own $5,000 right now of Bitcoin. The way that I played Bitcoin was June 5th of last year. I went in and I bought a company by the name of MicroStrategies that was at $125 a share back then. And I put a considerable amount of money into that stock. And the reason that I did so is that truthfully, I didn't really know how to buy a large amount of of Bitcoin and crypto. Yeah. Coinbase was aggravating me. I had bought a little bit of it, and then I sold some, and then it was just too complicated for me, even though it's not complicated at all. I didn't want to get one of those wallets. What if I didn't want to do it that way? So I didn't know, how do I play crypto without buying the actual crypto? So I bought MicroStrategies because the CEO was putting 100% of their working capital, all the cash that this company had, into Bitcoin. So I thought, if Bitcoin goes up, the price of his stock will go up. So that's how I did it. All right, so the stock went from 125 to 1,030, and that's where I sold. It's now at about 400. I still would have made 4 times my money if I had held on. But when it went to 1,035 approximately, which is where I did sell it, I decided that's it. I've never made that much money that fast before in my life. I am not going to get greedy. And I sold it. And that's how I played Bitcoin. But however, with that said, so I own now $5,000 of Bitcoin, and I do it through PayPal because it was just easy to do it. But I'm a little concerned about Bitcoin right now because I'm afraid of what's happening in China and how they're doing their cryptocurrency and what they're going to allow and not. I'm concerned that the United States is going to get involved in regulating it. But even with all of that said, I still am a fan of Bitcoin. I think it's absolutely possible that it could go down from $32,000 or $34,000, which it is today, back down to maybe even 12 or 15,000. But if you're going to buy Bitcoin, you buy it and you keep it now for a long, long time. I just don't see Bitcoin as that you buy it and then it goes up, you sell it, and then it might continue to go up. And then you missed out on it. So I would play Bitcoin as if it's something that is going to be something that's in the future. I don't know how or why or what, but I don't plan to sell even my little amount, no matter what.
Right, so you're not trading in Bitcoin, you're investing in Bitcoin, and there's a bit of a difference there. When you talk about buying index funds, which we love at NextAdvisor, we love index funds, we talk a lot about dollar cost averaging, so just putting the same amount of money in month after month. Would you recommend the same strategy for crypto, dollar cost averaging?
Yeah, I would recommend the same strategy. However, with index funds, I would not say whenever you invest, you should expect to lose. Because in the index funds, eventually you are going to make money no matter what. You're going to be just fine as long as you have at least 5, 10, 15 years till you need this money, preferably longer. With Bitcoin, every penny that you put in, you have to know that if you lost it, you would still be okay. I would not be investing in any cryptocurrency that I needed that money. I wouldn't do it. Because, Adam, the other thing I'm not liking is that it's as if one person comes out and makes a comment, it goes up, and then it goes down, and then it does this, and then it does that. I have to tell you, the other thing I'm not liking is a lot of this ransomware is being able to be done because they're being paid in Bitcoin. And so it may just come that if ransomware continues to really be like blossom and everybody is being held ransom and all of those ransoms are to be paid in Bitcoin, I can't imagine that somehow the United States doesn't come in and do something to really clamp down on Bitcoin.
Yeah, that makes sense. One last Bitcoin question. We've talked to some CFPs who say, sure, if you want to invest in Bitcoin, make it 1% of your portfolio, make it 3%, 5%. Is there a benchmark that we should be looking at or that you recommend?
No, it depends on how much money are you willing to lose, in my opinion. And that I don't know what that equates to, some percentage that you may have. So, Bitcoin, I would look at kind of like gold, that it's an investment. I still don't see it as a currency, even though countries have already made it that you can transact in Bitcoin. But it becomes interesting because I just want to say something, that even this ransomware that we did, or that the oil company did, and I think it was $7.5 million, even though they got a lot of it back. They didn't get all of it back. Why? Because Bitcoin had decreased in value from the time that they, put up the ransom in Bitcoin. So I think it's going to be very difficult to use it as a currency because of its fluctuations. So I would view it as an investment, and I would view it as a seriously speculative investment at this point in time. And I would then see what happens with it. But I think it should be a part of your portfolio as long as you can afford to lose that money and you're going to keep it for a seriously long period of time.
Got it. All right, let's switch gears a little bit. We're talking about Pride Month in June. May was Mental Health Awareness Month, and getting a lot of questions, and we're doing a bit of coverage around the link between mental health and financial health. I know it's something you've talked about too. Tell me what you see as, how important is the link between mental health and financial health, and how can we get better at changing our money mindsets?
You heard me say that you and your money are one. So if your mental health isn't good, then your financial health isn't going to be good as either. So everything in life is based on your mental health, everything. And so mental health is probably the most important thing that you can work on and that matters. And it's a serious problem. And it's a serious problem for many, many people today, more than I've ever seen it before. So finding a solution to it, working with somebody, just having a group, whatever it is, just having one person to even talk to is so very important, Adam. And I would promise you, if your mental health improves, your life improves. And if your life improves, your money improves as well.
Good. Okay, we'll do one more question. This is from a reader named Tammy. It's an interesting one. We have a lot of young readers in our audience, and she wants to know, what advice would you give to 25-year-old Suze Orman?
So what advice would I give to myself when I was 25?
That's right.
So at 25, I was still a waitress at the Buttercup Bakery. What would I give myself? I would say the advice would be to have faith that everything always happens for the best. And to just keep putting one step after another and to follow your heart. And it would really be just that simple. Because as I look back on my life and all the things that have happened to me, every failure, every bad relationship, every abuse that I suffered, whatever it may have been, from a parent or whatever, has led me to be who I am today. It's led me to be strong. It's led me to go, I can do this, and I can do this because I did it. I did it. And when you've done it, you're not afraid of doing something else. So I would just tell myself to have faith that everything happens for the best, and just wait to see what your life is going to turn out to be. And that's what I would tell all of you. I would tell all of you to be a warrior and not to turn your back on the battlefield. That everything that has ever gone wrong in your life will lead you to something that is so, so right. So every no leads you that much closer to a yes. Everything that goes wrong makes you even stronger. And the stronger that you are, because you got through it, the better your life's going to be. And the better that the yeses and the successes are going to be. So I would just say, accept everything that goes on in your life as if it's a blessing. And I know that's hard. I know some horrible things have happened to many of you. And I can tell you some horrible things have happened to me. Would I change any of the things that have ever happened to me in my entire life? No, I would not, including the health issue that I went through last year and I'm still going through. Would I change that? No. When they didn't even expect me to live. And if I did live, I was going to be a paraplegic or a quadriplegic, which I'm not, as you can see, but I wouldn't change anything. So if you could have that type of attitude, your life starts to work far better for all of you.
It's a perfect note to end on. Thank you, Susie, for spending time with us here at NextAdvisor. We really appreciate it. Please give our best to KT as well. Any last thoughts before we go?
I have a podcast, the Women in Money podcast, and everyone's smart enough to listen. And it used to be Women and Money and the Men Smart Enough to Listen. And just a little bit ago, I changed it because this is Pride Month. And it's maybe you're an L, maybe you're a G, maybe you're a B, maybe you're a T, maybe you're a Q or a plus. And there are so many that are non-binary out there and they don't identify as being a man or a woman. And I realized that I was being exclusive versus inclusive to everybody. So last week, I changed the title of the podcast to Women and Money and Everyone Smart Enough to Listen. So we all need to look at our lives and see in what way Aren't we being accepting of everybody? We have to learn a new language. We have to learn when. Aren't we as open as we thought we were? And we all have to continue to grow and change so that everybody in this world feels validated for who they are.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. Thank you, Suze Orman. For more money advice and news and opinions, please check out time.com/NextAdvisor and Susie's podcast, Women and Money, and everyone smart enough to listen. I'm Adam Ariema, the editor-in-chief of NextAdvisor. Thank you for being here.